following this hearing.
That's great. Questions? Yes, Senator Hill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since DOI, AG, and OAH are inundated with cases and the challenges of those enforcement days, which is incredible. I mean, and we see where the problem is. Has the board ever considered creating an arbitration program similar to the Contractor State License Board? If not, do you believe a program could reduce that case backlog in some way to work through it there and then keep those cases that wouldn't work or couldn't work through arbitration to the...
The board many years ago did discuss possibilities of arbitration or mediation programs. The issues with most of our cases relate more to negligent practice, not practicing in accordance with the standards of the profession, or especially with land surveyors failing to comply with some of the mandatory laws that require them to file their surveying maps as public documents with local agencies. They aren't really the types of cases where there would be the issue of financial or repair work, such as with a contractor and a consumer. And so our board did not feel that there would be as much benefit with our professions to mandatory arbitration or mediation programs.
We do have an administrative citation process.
You have one?
We do. We do have that, and that the board has delegated that to the executive officer. And I would say out of the cases, the enforcement cases that are closed with some kind of action, the majority of those actions are administrative citations and fines. The smaller portion goes to an actual disciplinary process that affects the status of a license. So we're handling that pretty well the last few years. We issue probably on average of about 100 to 120 citations a year.
And that is to both licensed and unlicensed individuals.
Right.
And many times the citation orders to the licensees, it orders them to correct the problem that led to the citation. It may order a land surveyor to file the map that they were required to file, or it may order a licensed engineer to modify their written contract to ensure that it includes all the required elements and that they use a written contract with their clients as required by law.
We approach it as our primary objective is to educate and seek compliance. If the surveyor hasn't filed a map, we encourage them to file the map. That's what we want you to do, and this is why you need to do that, why it's important. If an engineer has not communicated with their client appropriately, we encourage them to do that. Until it rises to the level of either repeated offenses or it's really in the process of negligence or incompetence, that's when we go to a formal disciplinary action.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. The one comment I will make, and then we'll invite our public forward, is I noticed that you reach out to universities and colleges.
Yes.
Around engineering. I thought that was something that I just wanted to touch on. We talk a lot about things like that up here. And do you feel that there's an adequate number of students coming through our universities to fill your profession? Is it a growing field, or?
I believe there's an adequate number coming in or coming out of the colleges and universities. I don't feel that we're doing an adequate enough job getting to them and helping them to understand the value and importance of licensure. That's one thing that we're trying to do a lot more of. And it's not just, we have to target the students, but we also have to target the professors. Mm-hmm. It's a different marketing approach, because sometimes the professors are not even aware of the value of licensure. And we have a lot of our candidates for licensure come in from outside of other countries. And they tend to have a much better appreciation of the degree program and getting to licensure, because it means something where they're at in their country, the U.S. licensing process. Mm-hmm. But so they understand that a lot more than the local ones do. But we would like to spend a lot more time. We just had staff at Sac State last weekend, mm-hmm. and we were at Fresno State a few weeks ago. We really get a lot out of that process, just answering the questions for licensure. It's all about the steps to licensure and why.
Mm-hmm. Well, very good. Thank you for doing that.
If I could just add on the issue of outreach, our board is becoming very aggressive in participating at the board level in activities that are intended to provide education, to encourage consideration as for engineering careers, particularly among young women. And so we are taking that on as a volunteer effort, and we are trying to complement the staff's efforts in this area.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're doing that. It sounds really encouraging. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to present to you today, and we look forward to continuing to work with the staffs and with your offices on proper response.
Thank you.
All
and I do think we have a couple public comments from our professional comments. We welcome you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. Good afternoon. My name is Don Shinsky. I'm here on behalf of the Structural Engineers Association of California. Our 4 member organizations represent more than 3,000 engineers who practice structural engineering in the state. We fully support and endorse the reauthorization of our licensing board, with whom we have a open and productive relationship. We also would like to call your attention to one item in your background report. That's item 18 regarding significant structures. We at CHOC believe California is overdue to raise the minimum qualifications required for the design of structures that deserve the added expertise and experience and tested knowledge and typically a specialized education that licensed structural engineers can bring to bear. These structures are those that are critical to public safety and disaster response, and vital to the continued functioning, both economic and socially, of a community following an earthquake or other catastrophe. With me to share our thoughts today is Ryan Kirsting, our board president.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon to you and the distinguished members of the committee. I'm Ryan Kirsting, current president of CHOC, and I'm also, maybe more importantly, a practicing licensed structural engineer here in Sacramento, an associate principal at Buehler & Buehler Structural Engineers. As Don said, we want to make sure you're aware of our efforts to better promote public safety and improve community resilience by setting minimum qualifications for the engineers that design vital and complex structures here in California. As you know, current law only requires that K-12 public schools and hospitals be designed by licensed structural engineers. However, CHOC firmly believes that this standard should apply to other structures whose performance and recovery is equally vital to communities' disaster response and economic recovery. We are referring to these as significant structures, and in the most general of terms, these would be emergency response structures, tall and or other complex buildings, and structures with a large number of occupants. Our purpose is founded on 3 key principles, the first of which is changes in the engineering education requirements. Compared to years ago, civil engineers can obtain their bachelor's degree and obtain their license with only a minimum number of structural engineering courses, even if structural engineering is their preferred concentration. The 2.5-hour special seismic exam administered for the PE license is simply not enough to ensure adequate performance of significant structures. The second point is that advances in the practice of structural engineering in particular has changed significantly even in the last 5 years. Structures are becoming more complicated and engineers are under more pressure to build more with less every day. Those who have the extra experience in testing required to become licensed as structural engineers are better suited to address the issues critical to the performance of these significant structures. The third item is that local and indeed national focus on disaster preparedness and community resilience. We recently observed the 25-year anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake and the 20-year anniversary of the Northridge earthquake. And really, since we've not had a significant earthquake in California in nearly those 20 years, we need to learn the lessons from examples internationally in Japan and New Zealand and Chile. And the conversation around these anniversaries and the international events has focused the policymakers, the engineers, and the public alike on the concept of community resilience. To address community resilience, CHOC believes that the specialized education experience and extra testing of the California licensed structural engineers should be leveraged to elevate the requirements for the design of significant structures. The importance of this issue has already been realized in legislation in many Western states, and quite frankly, where California was once the leader in the structural engineering licensure for design of significant structures, we're now falling behind. SEOC's proposal follows along the same lines of the legislation in these other Western states, and this is something we've been working on for a few years now. We appreciate the opportunities we've had to discuss this with committee staff and with board staff, as well as our other stakeholder groups. We are certainly looking to move this item forward, and we'd be happy to answer any questions today. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Now we have a few more people. We do have a time set for the next hearing, so we have to keep moving forward. Yes,
ma'am. I'll be brief. Good afternoon,
Good
ladies
afternoon.
and gentlemen. I'm Robert McMillan. I'm a professional land surveyor and an engineer in training. I'm a liaison to the board for professional engineers, land surveyors, and geologists for the California Land Surveyors Association, CLSA. Also in attendance today is CLSA President Jay Seymour. And Jay is up here for this hearing and also tomorrow to receive Senate Resolution number 16, recognizing National Land Surveyors Week in California. So happy Land Surveyors Week. This is my first time to address any legislative committee of this nature. It's an honor and I appreciate the opportunity. Most importantly, I think I want to convey CLSA's support for the board and the board executive officer and board staff for what they do for the professions. And also to thank the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the Senate Rules Committee for completely staffing the board members, the 15 positions that regulate the professions. Very important that those seats are all filled. CLSA works very cooperatively with the board and their staff and their technical advisory committees. The work that they do is critical to the continued economic health as well as the protection of the public of California. That's about all I want to take up of your time, and I'd like to turn over the microphone to Mr. Jay Seymour, if I may.
thank you.
Thank you
very much. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, Madam Chair and the committee here today. I'll do what all good speakers should do at the end of the day is wad up your speech and make it very short. The best news is we get along with this board. We work with this board. We are committed to education, communication, and legislation. We're all on the same page. My state association has 22 chapters up and down the state. Most of them have a professional practice committee where we work with the local surveyors and the county surveyors and actually feed them work. And it's a relationship that's worked well for us, and we are very proud of that. We have a liaison that goes to all their meetings. They're going to be at our state conference here this weekend. So if I can say anything else, it's just that they're doing a great job. I want to thank them publicly. And the last thing I'd like to see is that we always have money and time for these people to go to the national meetings, as you heard the other boards talk about. NCEES is very important. California's thought of very highly at that level, and they haven't been to some meetings for several years. So that's something that's very important so we can make sure California voice is heard. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, members. I'm Kelly Garman. I am with the American Council of Engineering Companies of California. We represent over 800 private engineering and land surveying firms, and I echo Jay's sentiments. We've had a great relationship with the board. They're very helpful. They're very engaged on the same topics that we are, very responsive to the needs of our members, so we fully support the sunset extension. One issue in regard to the SEOC proposal, we are engaged in conversations with them and the board. They are aware of the concerns of our members, so we don't think it's fully cooked yet, but we're working with them and continue to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Gary Morath. I represent the Association of Engineering and Environmental Geologists. We're more than 2,000 professional engineers, geologists, hydrogeologists, and environmental scientists working throughout the state. I should make it known that prior to the Geology Board being merged with the BPELs, We were also very vocally opposed to the merger of the boards. I would like to congratulate the board right now. I think the merger of the two has worked out wonderfully. We are thrilled with the way the board has operated. We strongly support the merger of the G&G fund with Pell's fund. It's in the best interests of our profession. We also strongly support the board's travel to other organizations, particularly ASBOG. I also would like to say that the explanation of the geophysicists was very eloquent and point on. But I would like to add, I've worked in 26 other states, and one thing I've noticed in other states is that they do look towards California for leadership and licensing of geologists. California was one of the first states to have licensing of geologists, and while I realize that there are very few geophysicists, the use of geophysicists is primarily on large infrastructure jobs. Outside of the oil and gas industry, the main consumer of geophysicists is the state and local governments. Department of Water Resources, Caltrans, other state agencies are the folks who would use geophysicists. And while having worked for the last 6 years with the board on preparing examinations for hydrogeologists and geologists, I totally sympathize with their position. And I realize how difficult it is to maintain that licensure. It does help, particularly the state and other consumers, providing a level of confidence in the services that are provided by the geophysicists. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Don't see any other questions?
I have one, if I could. Thank you, Madam Chair. The structural engineers raised a kind of an interesting point, and then looking at the report that we have, and it seems that this issue has been going on for some time. I know with structural engineers and civil engineers trying to determine what the significant structures are. What I'd like to see is, since it has been going on for quite a while, if by the end of this year you could report back to us in some form of, hopefully you have a solution to it and that it's resolved. If not, why not?
Thank you. That would be a great thing to do. We would, we're very active in working with both SEAC, ACEC, and PEG has raised some concerns with this also. And we do see that there may be concerns about a big bite of the pie. So we've offered that we're here to help facilitate whatever we can do and give our expertise from the licensing perspective.
Your help
would be more than happy
appreciated, so
to
we
give
can
you a
find
report.
out by the end of the year.
Sure, we'd be more than happy.
Hopefully a solution, if not where the problems are.
Sounds good. We'd like to do that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
We'll have a 5-minute recess.
Find our agenda. Okay, we'll move on to our final item today, item number 8. It's a special order at 3 p.m. It's a review of the California State Athletic Commission. So if I'd like to come forward, Mr. Carvelli and Mr. Foster. And I'd like to also welcome today to the Business and Professions Committees, the Assembly Committee on Arts, Entertainment, Sports, and Media. And the chair of that committee, Assemblymember Calderon, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I want to thank everybody for being here today to take part in this important sunset review and oversight hearing of the California State Athletic Commission. We do have a long agenda today, and I want to thank the chairs of the respective BMP's committees, Senator Hill and Assemblymember Bonilla, for setting the special order so that my committee, the Arts, Entertainment, Sports, Tourism, and Internet Media Committee, could participate today. Most of the issues to be covered have been raised by the excellent white paper prepared by Senate staff, so I'll keep my comments brief. The work of the State Athletic Commission is vital to the health and safety of athletes who engage in combative sports and in their preservation of an important contributor to the state's economy. Without a functional athletic commission, the state would lose its ability to provide a forum for athletic achievement and an entertainment source that attracts thousands of fans each year. The past few years have been ones of rebuilding and restoring order and effective internal procedures for the commission. Our mutual goal is for the commission to reach their full potential and to comply with legislative mandates set forth in law. I will be interested in hearing from the current leadership of the commission about recent efforts to move the commission forward from its past woes to becoming a healthy agency capable of meeting its mission. In particular, what institutionalized changes have been made or what new processes have been put in motion to assure us that the commission is capable of its assigned watchdog role. And following up on the work my committee did last year at our informational hearing on homophobia and transphobia in sports, I will be looking for Mr. Foster to speak to the issue of licensure of transgender student athletes or athletes in general and progress the commission has made in this area. Finally, I want to say to the athletes, promoters, and consumer groups here today that I'm most interested in hearing what you have to say. As the people most affected by the work of the commission, your voices are the ones that should be heard loudest. And again, I just want to thank the two chair members of BNP for allowing me to participate today, and I look forward to a very informative hearing.
Well, we're very happy that you're here today because your insight and the history that you have in the commission is very important, and for the committee members, it's very vital to the questions that we have today and for the sunset review that we're conducting. So if you'd like to begin. Very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, chairs, and members and staff. It's a privilege to be here. My name is John Carvelli. I'm chairman of the Athletic Commission. And of course, you know Mr. Foster, our executive director. It's been less than 2 years since I've served on the commission. So I would like to give you a quick, if I could, snapshot of 2 years of progress, if we could. And I'm sure you'll have a bunch of questions, and we're ready for you. Health and safety, that's our mission. It's very clear. It's very simple. It drives everything we do. And I can tell you that I feel like, and we feel like, I can speak for the commissioners, that we have ensured and promoted health and safety over these past 2 years. We are fiscally solvent and comfortable. We have revenues that exceed our expenditures. We have, for the first time in quite a long time, maybe in the history of the commission, I'm not sure, a 6-month reserve balance. And that balance is based on our 6-month of run rate. We have spent a great deal of time, effort, and engaged a lot of important stakeholders and prominent physicians and other scientists on the study of traumatic brain injury. It's obviously a huge topic. We're trying to stay out in front on there and actually be leaders in this. We view our commission as the leaders in the country. That is our goal, to be the leader, to be the model. And I think Mr. Foster exemplifies that, for those of you who know him. We have, I don't know if it's in your packet, there's one thing I wanted you to take a look at, if you would mind, the dangers of weight cutting and dehydrating. It's something that has come from a lot of work. 16 physicians and a lot of people have gotten together to work on this one-page document that is being rolled out to our community to talk about the dangers of weight cutting, dehydration, and what effects it has on traumatic brain injury. We're very proud of that. We're very proud of AB 1116, Assembly Member, is that right? 1186, sorry, Assembly Member Bonilla, is our youth pancreation bill. We reached out into an unregulated area with children, and we're being, frankly, exploited on certain levels, and you gave us the authority to regulate that, and we did it. I'm sure you'll have questions. We can tell you more about that. We're very proud of our pension fund, the Boxers Pension Fund. It's a balance of about $5.5 million. We're unique. We're the only other fund in the state besides CalPERS. This past year, we had just under 30 distributions. That may not sound like a lot, but compared to other years where we had 5, we're proud of the progress we're making. We're also working on regulations to make that a better pension fund. We've improved oversight over our delegated entities, USA Boxing, youth pancration, USFL, camo, amateur MMA, and kickboxing. We can talk more about that if you wish. Additional drug testing, huge, big deal that we're working on. And finally, I will add this. I think if you had a chance to look into the packet that was provided, it is an excellent white paper, Mr. Calderon, that there's a bunch of letters in there that talk about the work that's being done, particularly pointing out what Andy has been doing. We feel like we have the best EO in the nation. A lot of people seem to agree with us. I have one problem with him. He wouldn't approve me to fight. He rejected my application, so we'll have to work on that. But anyway, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And of course, I'm here to answer any questions you may have. Andy?
My name is Andy Foster. I serve the commission as the executive officer. I think the commission's in a lot better place than it was. I'm here to answer any questions that you have.
Very good. Well, there was some issues that were mentioned to respond to. I see we have issue 7, issue 10, and issue 13 were designated in the paper, and then certainly the members of the committee can ask any questions that they feel appropriate. But if you do have a response, a prepared response for issue 7, which was laid out, that's the issue of the commission's revenues and the predictability of those.
Like to start?
Or the lack of predictability?
The commission gets 80%, approximately 80% of its revenue from gate taxes. So we regulate an event, and we get like 5% of the gross ticket sales. So if an event has $100,000, we get $5,000 plus some licensing fee. And it's about an 80-20 ratio. 80% of our revenue comes from gate taxes, and gate fees, and 20% comes from licensing fees. This is very much different than other boards within the Department of Consumer Affairs that have a better, more steady stream because licenses are more easily predictable. So if we don't get events, we don't have any money. And specifically televised events, because we have the broadcast, we like those because a lot of our revenue comes from those, because typically if it's on TV, not always, but typically you'll have a big gate also. So you can tax both the broadcast and the but if you don't have the events, for example, the winter, okay? The winter, you have Christmas, you have Thanksgiving, okay? And we live and die on the weekends, okay? So you take out Christmas, most of the time you take out New Year's. Sometimes not, but most of the time. So with December, we have to really be frugal with our money during the summers, because those are good months for us. We have lots of events, lots of weekends. We're doing TV. And then when we get into the holiday season, we crash. And we almost don't get hardly very few calls. The office goes from being like super busy and our revenue goes down. So we have to have enough reserve to get us through the winter months. I'll give you a perfect example. I think we deposited $57,000 in February, which is the last of our winter months, and we've already got over $200,000 this month for deposit in March. So that kind of shows you kind of the fluctuations that we encounter, and it's difficult for me to give a good projection when I'm asked, well, what are you going to spend? Because a lot of our expenses come from the events we regulate. So if we have lots of events, I'm going to spend more money, because the inspectors only assign them and the drug testing's only done when there's events, and you see how it works.